Okay, guys, I think we can start now. It's almost 4 minutes past the hour, or almost five. So I'm sharing the screen now, and as usual, it's always very weird to give a presentation when you cannot see your audience or and their reaction, right? So and you'll just be talking to a screen. Anyways, above all, hello everyone. Bonjour, marhaba, salam, bon dia, hola, if there's anyone from Portugal by any chance watching. Welcome to this workshop, and welcome to the Euromed Scale Up Innovation Day, which has started a few hours ago. I hope you've been enjoying the session so far. And I want to thank the organization, first of all, for inviting me to give this workshop on how to create an international mindset for your startup to guarantee successful growth. So I'll give you a quick introduction about myself first. So I majored in biology at the University of Nottingham in the UK, and I developed, I'd say, 15 years experience in healthcare, mainly always working in sales, marketing, and strategy. I worked in medtech, biotech, and pharma companies, but also I tried my fair bit of professional experiences outside of healthcare, also to prove myself and to find out other industries. And I'm also a very big fan of best practices, and you can learn from cross-industry innovation and learn from other sectors as well. So I worked even in real estate. I worked in the communications agency, so working with all different type of industries, from banking to automotive to retail and FMCG. I've been also recently a strategic consultant, and I've also had my and I'm leading still my entrepreneurial adventure by founding Lab to Market, which is a consulting company to help startups and researchers in the scientific and tech backgrounds to launch their products into the service. So to bringing the business part, the go-to-market strategy, and also the network to help these companies launch their products and enter new markets. Also, since the beginning of this year, I've been representing Startup Portugal, which is the let's say the arm of the Ministry of Economy of Portugal that deals with startups and the innovation ecosystem, as a project manager to support the Cape Verde Islands government to launch entrepreneurial and innovation strategies for the country. I'm also a mix of backgrounds. I'm half French, half Portuguese, with some Persian blood and some Indian blood, and I've lived in France, Spain, and Portugal, and I'm based in Portugal now at the moment. So what we do, basically, we give support with the technology transfer, business consultancy as well, open innovation as well for companies, acceleration programs, even internal and agile processes, and also access to funding, from getting grants, access to VCs, business angels, and even pitch preparation as well. So that was just a very short introduction about who I am and what do I do, because I think it's always best if you know where your speaker comes from. And what we will be talking about today specifically. So after this brief introduction, and we'll check a few points as well, we'll be talking about how, when you launch your company, your startup, your venture, how you should aim high and think about conquering the world. The sky should really be your limit when you have an idea and you're passionate about that idea. You have to be bold, you have to launch a startup, your product, and to become an international player, but obviously you need preparation, and that's what we'll be talking about. You should think about acting local and thinking global. This is obviously, I'll tell you now, there's a cliche, however, it is true though, because if you want to go global, you have to be very sensitive to local languages, cultures, religions, and we'll be talking about that. The third point will be a melting point as a company, a melting pot. Make sure you get as many international nationalities and international people in the company, because I'm a firm believer that that's just going to enrich your experience and the growth of your startup. And obviously, last but not least, embrace the unknown. You have to be prepared to fail. You have to be prepared to take risk, and that is the quest for reaching out to new markets. But that is the only way to go global. I'm just going to check if everything is fine. Still here in the chat. Yes. Okay. So, still in the intro parts. I don't know if you guys are aware, but this is a study that was launched by CB Insights a year or so ago. So why do startups fail? And the 20 top reasons why startups fail is, first of all, there's no market need, which means that the startup or the company didn't really do thorough market research, ask their potential customers if they would buy their product or service. There wasn't that analysis. And sometimes that happens, especially from a scientific perspective. There's a big disconnection between what you're doing and the market from a research perspective. And you should always go and test the market to make sure that there is a need for your product or your service. And that is the product market fit expression that sometimes we talk about. Also, when you've run out of cash, and that means either you haven't managed your budget well enough, you've had some unforeseen experiences or incidents, or you just it was too hard for you to get some funding from VCs or others, and that sometimes, unfortunately, it happens. The third point is also not to have the right team. It's hard when you're a founder to get the right profile, because your needs might change as your company or startup is growing, but also making sure that you have the right people alongside you who will share the same passion. And that is very important. But I think out of our workshop, we'll be addressing these two main points, the not having a market need and not having the right team. Because with some of these recommendations that I will be giving you, I'm assuming we will be avoiding these 2 points and make sure that your company will be successful. So first point, well, let's conquer the world. That's the most important thing. When you have an idea and you're passionate about it, you should really aim high and think that it's going to reach the 4 corners of the globe. And you should really be driven by that. If your ambition is just to be big in your own country, which sometimes is fine, but I think we live in such a globalized world with so many tools from internet, e-commerce, such easy translation apps, etc., that it's very easy to be able to enter new markets. You just have to be willing to take that risk. But first of all, the first steps, and honestly, in order for you to be successful for an international growth, you have to think about that right at the moment that you're starting the company. And that comes from the logistics or the bureaucracy part even. So from a company perspective, just when you're figuring out what your name and logo will be, you should make sure that it can be pronounced in most languages, and make sure that eventually it's not culturally offensive, because it can be. Some markets can be sensitive to names, to symbols, to religious connotations, to colors even, to numbers even. And so you should try to, once you think about the name, the way it can be pronounced in other countries, I think you should have a global vision. Obviously, you shouldn't test, what would be perception of the plus 150 countries around the world, but make sure at least you get the top 3 to 5 main languages across the globe and cultures, and make sure that the name and the logo will be easily accepted in those markets. Make sure there are no copyright infringements. It's very easy nowadays to check if someone has the same name or same logo as you, and if it's a registered trademark or not. Excuse me. So make sure not only that you check if you're not infringing anyone's rights, and make sure you get rights for your brand as well. Get international rights for your name and for your brand, and that goes along as well for your domain, but we'll talk about that afterwards. A next step after a name and a logo is the legal status of your company. Are you going to have a limited liability company? Is it going to be non-for-profit? Is it going to be an association? What type of organization legally will your company be? And that is important because that's going to also define how you're going to do business, if you're for profit or not, if you can do international business, if you can be present and sell abroad, if you can have partners joining in, even now at the moment, if you have co-founders, or if you eventually, if you're open to some VC funding, a lot of the times they want to share with your company, so make with you, of course. So the way that your company is brought in legal status, I couldn't have an influence whether that is feasible or not. So have that in mind. And again, ask yourself, ask your lawyers, ask anyone who is assessing you in that part, if your company wants to go international, if you have the right status, legal status for your company. Also, website, apps, emails, make sure you get the right domain and it's easy to remember. And don't forget that emails will be linked to it. So if your name is very big for your website or for your company, don't forget that whenever you have to give away your email, and if it's in a foreign language, if you have a lot of names, even my name is David McBully. And if I'm working for another company and I have an email, just saying david.mcbully at whatever, sometimes it could take a long time. And depending on the country I'm dealing with, sometimes it'll be easier or harder for them to understand. So just think about those small nuances, which sometimes can really make a difference. Don't forget that if you're developing an app as well, if you have your website, your platform, either for mobile brands, app stores, etc., make sure it's accessible on all operating systems and most app stores, whether it's Google Play, etc. So you don't just think about some type of operating systems. Don't forget, and we'll go through that later as well, that some countries might be more focused on Apple phones, other will be more focused on Android phones. So if you want to go international, you should be able to develop your mobile platform, e-commerce platform, eventually applications on all operating systems. And nowadays there are tools that can very easily let you be, let's say, operating system agnostic and be easy to share on any existing operating system. And then obviously payment. So again, from a bureaucratic perspective, your bank account should be able to make and receive payments from abroad without being too costly. Sometimes banks have very high tariffs or taxes on international bank transfers. So think about that. I mean, obviously, it's something that you might think that that's not important for now. And obviously, you can always change banks, right, in the future. But at the same time, once you start doing more, receiving more payments or making more payments, those little taxes associated to the transfer, they start adding up, and then it's a monthly cost that it could be really irrelevant, and it's really taking some money off your budget. And also don't forget, if you sell online, again, make sure people can use their local cards. If you have an e-commerce platform or international credit cards or common platforms like PayPal, make sure that you make your access to your product or your service easy, because the more barriers there are, the more quickly people will go somewhere else. So the more user-friendly, the more accepting of all type of credit cards or payments, for instance, the easier it is for you to have clients from everywhere. And just a couple of questions, just to, some ice breaking. This is actually a brand from Iran. It's called, from the company called Paxam company, and they produced a soap called Barf, which means snow. Okay, so it makes sense. If it's a detergent powder, that you want that association with the fact that it's white, right? But again, barf in English, for people who don't know, it just means to vomit. So it's not a rather unfortunate choice of a name, but it's those little sensitivities that you should be aware of, and to make sure that you're not saying a bad word in any other country, or major country at least, or major language. And this doesn't just go for small companies or very national companies, even for big companies like IKEA. The way they translate some of their original furniture is sometimes unfortunate as well. So in this case, you have a work branch called Fartful, And I'm sure most of you understand what that means in English. So that just doesn't relate to startups or smaller companies. Even big companies unfortunately do those sort of mistakes. But still, in the aim of conquering the world, when you've thought about your company and how you should set up your company and your name and your logo, also when you think about your go-to-market strategy, then you have to think about your product or service, your international benchmark. Don't forget that we live in a globalized world. So a lot of the problems that you're trying to solve with your startup, with your company, someone else might be trying to do that in China, in India, in a small village in Brazil, wherever. So make sure you do a thorough international benchmark, because you might also have a big player in a different country that might be addressing the same space, even though they're not tackling the same problem. So it's very important that you understand if they are covering the same space or not, because if they're a big player, they could take you out of the market very quickly. So make sure you do that sort of due diligence, and you try to understand in the global scale if someone is doing similar to what you're doing, okay? If someone has the same idea. From an IP's perspective, in intellectual property, don't forget that if you have an invention that can be protected, if you try to patent it only in your country, that's only going to protect it in your country. So by the time you try to sell it in a different market, very easily someone can copy it, and then you won't be protected anymore. So it does cost, it does have a cost. So think about, there's several IP strategies that can enable you to very quickly just go to a couple of big markets, so to speak, China or the United States, for instance. Just make sure that there is an investment, but it can be worthwhile the investment. And a lot of the times the investors, if they see the potential, they are willing to pay for the IP costs for entering in different markets. And then let's not forget other market entry barriers. Local taxes or incentives for foreign companies. Sometimes when you enter another market, you have incentives, because if you're a foreign startup, they might give you some fiscal benefits. So you should really analyze that, if there are any language requisites or translation costs, because some countries say, if you want to enter this market, you've got to make sure that your product is 100% translated into our own language. Obviously, make sure if there's political and economic stability in the country, and what is the access to and cost of labor. Is it easy to hire people? Is there a big pool of talent, in whichever area you're working in? So think about that. Think also about the regulatory needs. If you want to enter the European market to sell a product, you need a CE mark. So what does that involve? What does that mean? What are the costs? How long does it take? And also, if you work in healthcare, which is also most of in the case those startups I work with, you need to deal with the local health authorities, because there's the regulatory process to make sure that if it's a medical device, if it's a drug that's an innovative drug, if it's sometimes even a digital health application, you have to check with the local health authorities if you have the right to sell it in that country. And also the real estate. How expensive is it to open an office, if you need to open an office in that new market? So all of these should be analyzed when you're looking at entering a new market. So make sure you do your homework so you don't get any surprises, because a lot of the times companies, they might have a good idea and a good product, but they end up having to either close because their international strategy and international growth was not well prepared enough. Act local and think global. Obviously, I mean, this is an example of a Coca-Cola advert in Japan, as you'd understand. Obviously, it's not written in Coca-Cola, but it's easy to understand it in a different language. So local matters, meaning local affairs, local aspects do matter. So make sure you translate your product or your service offerings. It's very important for your customer to understand what you're selling, what you're offering, what your product does, what are the benefits. And so adapt it to the local culture as well, if it makes sense. Understand your local consumer, his or her behaviors, his habits. Do they eat at the same time? Do they eat at the same places? Do they eat a lot of times in shopping centers? Do they order from takeaway or from restaurants? Do they order through Uber Eats or other applications? What social media platforms do they use the most? In some countries, people will be using more Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. Do they shop online? Is it a common thing? Do they buy more Android or Apple phones, as mentioned before? So adapt accordingly, because your marketing strategy might have to be different if you're entering a different market. So you need to understand your consumer behavior in order to adapt your marketing strategy. And then again, as I mentioned before, watch out for local symbols. Superstition, lucky numbers. There are many items which are visual or written that have to be adapted or give more of a local flavor, so that your clients can identify more with with your product or with your brand. So make sure that, and I'm just giving a quick example. I mean, you know that in Asian countries, people use a lot the stickers, right? When they write on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Messenger, on WeChat, for instance. And so after that, I think Facebook decided to bring a lot of stickers, so then it can be more usable across the globe and with Asian countries. So this is something you can do. You can adapt. Some symbols, again, can be as offensive in other countries. So be, again, aware of that. And when you're advertising, that's even more of a reality. But one thing I try to say is, obviously, you should adapt, but don't lose your identity. It's very important that you keep the core of your brand and your identity and your product simple, coherent, but just adapt some things that then people can understand that you are sensitive to the local culture and to the market needs, but people still know that you are a global brand. And if they go to another country, they'll find the same brand with the same values. Now, be a melting pot. What do I mean by being a melting pot? Make sure you have an international team. In a digital and globalized world nowadays, whether it's you're coding or imagining social media or you're doing something else, people can be anywhere in the world and they can work from anywhere in the world. You know, I'm sure you've heard the expression digital nomads. So the more nationalities you have in your company, the more people will be sensitive to language and culture issues and have a more open-minded vision and curious mindset as well, which is true. So people who've traveled a lot, they're more sensitive to the differences amongst cultures, amongst languages, and people would be automatically aware of those differences when launching or entering launching a new product or entering a new market. Again, to make sure you have an international team, hire through global networks. You don't always have to hire through expensive global executive search firms like the traditional Michael Page companies or Hayes or others. You can very easily hire through your own network of international friends or colleagues or professional contacts that you've worked with before. You can hire through LinkedIn as well, which is very easy to get a hold of a lot of CVs and talented people. And sometimes even your university. Don't forget, through other exchange programs, you have a lot of people who've come from different countries. So if you have an alumni club, right, your old colleagues from university, you should be able to reach out to people from other countries, and they might have other contacts who would be interested in eventually working for you and your company. So, and you also have international forums. So, you know, think out of the box how you can reach out to international network. And then again, take your team abroad for as an experience. You have a lot of, whenever you're trying to sell your product or your service, go to international exhibitions, go to international fairs. You're going to be able to meet a lot of international people, or do some sort of team building activities as well in the neighboring country. If it's just next to you, maybe you just have to drive there, or you don't have to take a plane. But because don't forget, maybe not all of your team members have had the same opportunities as you of traveling abroad. Some people have never left the country. Some people have sometimes not even left their city. So if you do enable them through your company to go somewhere else, to go to a new country and meet other people and new cultures, not only giving them an opportunity, they're going to feel a longer and lasting bond with your company. They're going to be thankful for it as well, and it's going to definitely open their mind and show them new world. They'll appreciate it, and they'll be more visionary and more productive and have a more open-minded attitude, which is very important as well. Other things that you can do as well to go abroad is think about international acceleration programs, where you're going to be able to present your startup and pitch your startup and your idea to international investors, to other networks, and to institutions who can then open doors to new markets. Excuse me. There are a couple minutes left. And then, of course, embrace the unknown, because you can have all of these ideas, you can do everything by the book. But there's one thing which is very important, is that it has to come from the inside. It has to come from your team. It has to come from yourself. And you have to let people be open-minded enough to try new things and to accept risk and failure. So be adventurous, go to new markets. You should globally validate your product and your service. Obviously, it's always a risk, but if you don't open the door, you don't know what's on the other side. So going to a different market, and if you don't want to take big risks, excuse me, try in the neighboring country something that will be easy, and it will be a easy first step. So, but new business opportunities can arise, more clients, big partnerships eventually, and even more visibility, and obviously at the end of the day, more revenue. That's what we all want. You might even find new opportunities that you weren't even aware of, you never thought of, but because that market probably is more open to your solution, then you'll understand that it has even a bigger potential, and it can go global. If you want to minimize the risk, what I suggest is, apart from entering acceleration programs from an international perspective, as I was mentioning, because that can give you a good network of contacts as well and give you sensitivity of what other markets need, but also try to find a local partner. So find a local partner that can help you soft land in the new market. It can be an international business consultancy company or governmental agency. There are other governments, a lot of governments who have programs for international startups to open an office or to try a new market in their own market. So sometimes, obviously, these government agencies, they are trustworthy. So and sometimes they don't have any cost association, because they have a service dedicated just to welcoming international founders and startups. At least that is the case with Portugal as well. So and they also have incentives. So think about that option. And then again, as I was mentioning before, very, very important, create the right internal mindset. You need to make sure that you are fostering a creative, innovating, and risk-taking culture internally amongst your team members. Let your team give out-of-the-box ideas, take risks, embrace failure. They should be able to do that and to feel comfortable in doing that, okay? So it's the explorer, curious, and entrepreneurial sort of mindset. Those are the ones that achieve really big things. So if you enable your team to be a little bit of a dreamer, along with working hard, which is very important, you will go far, okay? So empower your team to be able to think out of the box and to have a broader vision, because that's at least halfway to success for any international growth. There are some success stories, and we're running a little bit out of time now, but these are just examples of some small countries who have had startups who've gone global. So I'm using Skype, and obviously there's this debate if Skype is Swedish or from Estonia, but Estonia definitely has been a country in Europe that's had a major influence in the international startup scene, and with unicorns, for instance, TransferWise, Bolt, which was the old Taxify company, and now it's become a mobility company, Farfetch, which is a Portuguese company based in London, but in the online retail space. You have Stored Health, which is a digital rehabilitation application that I've been working with them recently, and they are in the United States now, and they're growing really fast. Avast, which is the software security company from the Czech Republic. Noon, I'm assuming a lot of you would know, they're growing a lot in the Middle East and even beyond the Middle East. Jumia, which is a Nigerian company that's not growing global, and Prezi, which is the Hungarian startup. They are helping develop presentations through Zoom and online presentations, and they're growing really fast as well, because obviously that is an international need. So again, just to go back to the stuff we were sharing before, with these recommendations, you will be definitely future-proofing your startup and making sure that you don't make a lot of mistakes, as in not making sure that there isn't a market need for your solution, and that you don't have the right team. Excuse me. Because with these recommendations, you'll be able to check before if the market is right, and also make sure you have the right team for this international growth. So don't be afraid, because you'll either step forward into growth or you'll step back into safety. So if you move forward, you are opening the opportunities and the doors to really go global and to increase your business and to have more of an impact in the world. So now I'm going to open up for Q&A. I'm sorry if this has gone a little bit delayed. I actually should have started on time. I don't know if there's any questions at the moment. And I hope you've enjoyed this so far. Okay, what I've seen so far, just general. So 30 people here online. Okay, guys, so no questions at the moment. What I see is people also explaining what they do, their company. If you have any specific questions for this, feel free also to reach out. I'm going to leave you here with my contact details. Also, this presentation has been shared with the organization. I hope the organization will be able to share with anyone who's interested in having access to this presentation. If you do, if you're not able to receive a copy, then let me know. Reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share a copy. So, just on a final note, don't forget that being an entrepreneur, having your own startup, going internationally, being successful, it takes time. It's hard. It's not a sprint. Okay, it's a marathon. It's gonna, it's gonna hurt sometimes. You're gonna lose motivation totally sometimes. But as Jack Ma says from Alibaba, and I really like his leadership style. He says it's true. Never give up, because today is hard. Tomorrow will even be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be sunshine. So there will always be a light at the end of the tunnel if you have a good product or service, if you believe in it, and if you're persistent. And even I can say that from a personal experience. If you're resilient and if you have a passion for what you do, things will go your way. And so just don't give up, okay? So wishing you all the best of luck. I'm still going to stay online here for a few more minutes. And again, thank you so much for watching. I saw that we had about 30 people live watching this presentation. I appreciate your time and your attention. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And best of luck with the rest of the event. Thank you very much. Thanks for your comment, Ryan. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to know more information as well, and if there's any way I can help you with your project management. Okay, just stop sharing. I just think, Christopher, no problem. I'll send you the slides as well if needed. Okay, no problem at all. If you need me to share again my details, feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn as well if needed. Okay, so thank you so much again. I see them. Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it, and good luck with the rest of your of the event. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions as well. And again, feel free to reach out. So thank you so much, and see you soon. Hopefully, bye bye. Take care.